Hello, and welcome to today's session on shaping sustainable digital future through telecom and technology. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Sachin Arora. I'm a partner at KPMG, and I head the Lighthouse practice, which takes care of data and artificial intelligence solutions for KPMG in India. So we have a esteemed panelist that I'm going to introduce you in some time. So today's session, as I said, is about shaping sustainable digital future through telecom and technology. 2020 actually marks 5 years since the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by United Nations member states, and that was in 2015. That just leaves 10 years to achieve them. So while significant progress has been made since 2015, a lot still needs to be done by the governments and the international community to deliver on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, mobile technology remains at the center of how we address our most significant global challenges. With the new world order having emerged on account of COVID 19, mobile networks were stress tested but withstood the unexpected massive surge in the data usage globally. Due to the continual investment in mobile infrastructure in recent years, it has proved to be robust and resilient, serving as cornerstone of continuity and recovery and bringing resilience to the entire system. This is reflective in the Sustainable Development Goal number 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, where mobile industry continues to achieve its highest impact. With this as the backdrop, I would love to introduce the esteemed panelist, and then going to bring them one on one to you. So, our first panelist, let me introduce Dr. Archana Gulati, uh, who is Joint Secretary Infrastructure um, and Digital Communication at NitiAayog. And Dr. Gulati is 1989 batch Indian Civil Services officer with 3 decades of experience in the field of telecommunication policy and regulation. She has degrees in economics, management, law, and public administration, and also holds a PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. A telecom policy expert with specializations in competition and universal service. She's posted as Joint Secretary Infrastructure and Digital Communication at NitiAayog, an Indian government's policy think tank. So, welcome to this session, Dr. Gulati. Um,
Thank you so
right. So, Dr. Gulati, just first of all, welcome to this session, and we would love to pick your views on how in your thought process, can digital communication contribute towards achieving the SDGs, and is there any change in the perspective on account of this pandemic?
Thank you, Mr. Arora. It's a pleasure being a part of this very pertinent discussion. Yeah, it's a great question. So, well, I guess all of us will agree that there's one thing that has become very certain, particularly as we undergo this pandemic, global pandemic, is that digital communications and ICTs are absolutely essential. In a situation where you're physically distanced and separated, it is only digital communications that can ensure business continuity, socioeconomic growth, and stability. Whether you talk about work from home, you talk about shop from home, you talk about learning from home, whether you talk about monitoring health remotely or logistics, one can't do without digital communications. Further, what the pandemic has also underlined very prominently is that digital divides can no longer be sustained, and they are not tenable anymore, because the people who are digital have not really suffered in such situations. In fact, even the government's efforts to reach out and alleviate the distress of people in crises like this becomes very difficult if they're not digitally connected. I can tell you one thing: post the pandemic, there has been a strong and renewed emphasis on both tapping ICTs for citizen services, health, education, logistics, agriculture, you name it, and also universal digital connectivity. Even of course before the onset of the pandemic, there was a huge emphasis on digital connectivity and ICT. This is evident from the vision of Digital India, and also the government's emphasis on digital financial inclusion, digital identity, digital education, digital health, the direct benefit transfer scheme, and the ICT infrastructure that underlies all this. Recently, you would have heard the announcements of the Digital Health Mission and the fact that the government now wants to connect every village, not just the Gram Panchayats, with optic fiber connectivity. The release of the National Digital Communications Policy in 2018, the emphasis on BharatNet, the release of the National Broadband Mission are all basically on account of the strong connectivity of telecom connectivity and ICT and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Whether you talk about equality, whether you talk about gender parity, whether you talk about health, employment, or environment. Telecom penetration, as we know, has a multiplier effect which cuts across the economy and society. And even going into our extremely increasingly digital future, telecom penetration is going to become essential for the achievement of sustainable development goals. In fact, every line of action that we undertake to achieve any particular sustainable development goal always has a digital connectivity and ICT counterpart. So for example, if the government tries to address regional disparity, through an aspirational district program, and you've targeted 112 aspirational districts, there will be a digital counterpart where the Department of Telecom will come up with special schemes to address connectivity in these aspirational districts, because without ICTs, you cannot really address the other issues that the government wishes to address to bring about regional parity. And of course, we know that all these sustainable development goals are related with each other. So if you have smart agriculture and logistics, you will be able to help end hunger. If you have digital health and education, you can help end poverty, apart from addressing those very sustainable development goals. Similarly, better land, water management through ICTs and sustainable development through smart grids, for example, will help prevent natural disasters which can aggravate poverty. So essentially, what we also must note is that in terms of digital connectivity, it's also a great transparency enhancer. It gives citizens a voice, and a very important feedback loop comes back into government policy formulation thanks to digital connectivity. This can empower citizens and strengthen justice and peace, which is another sustainable development goal. In particular, I'm a great believer in the power of digital connectivity to reduce inequalities and to bring about gender parity. We are all aware of the adverse impact of the pandemic on women in particular. Therefore, digital education, digitally enabled employment, security, all these can greatly enhance, the gender parity. Further, there is a population of persons with disabilities, and there is the aged population, which becomes especially vulnerable in crises like this. And once again, it is digital connectivity that can come to their aid. So these are my views. Thank you very much.
Um, Thank you, Dr. Gulati. I think very pertinent points that you made, that this mobile technology is not just the connectivity of phones or internet, it is also having a lot of socioeconomic impact for us, at least in India. One more point before I move on to the next speaker. What, according to you, can be done to hasten this connectivity?
Yeah, so thank you for that question too, because as I've emphasized, connectivity is so very essential. So it's always been the focus of the government, and there are many more things that we can do, we are doing, and we can do to improve connectivity. I think the first important thing is that connectivity has to be universal. Right now, we have a very skewed telecom penetration where rural teledensity is less than 60%, and just about a third of the rural population has access to broadband. So this needs to be addressed. And as I have mentioned earlier, then there is the question of populations, particular populations, for example, women's access, access for persons with disability. Second is the quality of our broadband itself. We do lag behind on speed. So our average speed is said to be about 12 megabits per second. Well, but happily, the National Broadband Mission has a very ambitious target of 50 Mbps. We also face a major problem. I know that the industry faces a major problem when it comes to deployment of fiber and telecom infrastructure, and this happens because of right-of-way issues. These need to be tackled. At present, we have less than 40% of towers having fiber connectivity. We also need to increase the number of towers themselves. So that's another thing. The National Broadband Mission says that we want to double the number of towers almost. There is also the question of adequate availability of spectrum, which will be necessary to spread broadband and to improve the quality of broadband in our country. We also need adequate spectrum in different bands to actually unleash various types of innovative services and applications. If we are to tap into the benefits of 5G, big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., we need to address these issues. New telecom technologies also have a very different deployment architecture, and therefore the regulatory environment needs to keep pace with all these changes. The other thing that we have noted is that there is over reliance on terrestrial connectivity, especially mobile broadband in our country. It's obvious that we need multimodal connectivity and redundant and robust connectivity apart from terrestrial connectivity. We can't expect that broadband connectivity through only mobile will or terrestrial connectivity will reach 100% of our population, which means that we need to strengthen other modes of communication, for example, our satellite broadband abilities. I've already mentioned some of the schemes that the government has undertaken to address broadband connectivity. NitiAayog, in fact, has been working with the Department of Telecommunications to expedite the implementation of BharatNet through public-private partnership. This would increase, the presence of private sector in this program, which would hopefully also induct the latest technologies and would increase uptake and usage of broadband in rural areas. We've also worked with the Department of Telecom to solve right-of-way issues so that we can expedite fiber rollouts and the deployment of telecom infrastructure. On the one hand, state governments and local authorities. On the other hand, central government departments like the railways, highways, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Power and Natural Gas. Everybody needs to come on board if we are to solve this problem. Essentially, broadband is for all, and it's something that has to be appreciated. In fact, as a part of the National Broadband Mission, DOT is very rightly creating a state broadband readiness index, which would point out the status of readiness as far as infrastructure is concerned, and also the conducive policy environment that exists in states. Hopefully, this should help to sensitize states about this very important issue. We are also aiding Department of Telecommunications as far as opening up and revitalizing the satellite communication sector is concerned, so that we can spread broadband to rural and remote areas, ensure robust multimodal connectivity, and tap into the full potential of things like Internet of Things and location-based services. In fact, the whole regulatory environment of telecom can be made more conducive to greater investment, innovation, and rapid deployment. Probably there needs to be much greater simplification of the licensing regime itself, greater ease of doing business, a more technology neutral approach probably are the need of the hour. Complex ex ante systems probably need to be replaced with trust based authorization accompanied by good deterrence. A case in the point, in fact, is a very progressive changes in the other service provider licenses that the government has recently implemented. This will greatly benefit our IT services sector and facilitate remote working and improve the working of the sector. This is a good case of the pandemic actually highlighting the need for change, which would have otherwise probably taken a long way to come. In fact, we should use this crisis to bring about many other such reforms. For example, the pandemic has highlighted the need for online recharges. It has highlighted the need that smartphone penetration needs to be actually universal. It's also highlighted the need for nationwide ration cards and the transferability of subsidy no matter where a person is in the country. Another thing that I would like to point out is that we have an excellent universal service obligation fund scheme in the country, which has adequate corpus and a very, very good set of rules. This can actually be tapped in to improve our telecom penetration and to bring in innovative services, particularly for rural and remote areas. The other thing that the pandemic has highlighted is the need for secure and resilient communications. This means enhancing our presence in global supply chains as far as telecom equipment and ICT equipment is concerned, increasing our participation in intellectual property rights and standard settings. What I can assure you is the government is very cognizant of all these issues and is really working hard to solve these problems. In summary, what I can say is that the push for digital communications has always been there and it continues to be there. And in fact, there's a strong and renewed emphasis in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gulati. I think very pertinent point that you're making, and it's heartwarming to see the policymakers have such a broad view of the impact these technologies will make on each of us consumers. So, thank you for this insight. So, with this, let me invite the second speaker and the panelist today, Mr. Amit Marwah. Amit is the Chief Marketing Officer at Nokia, and he's responsible for customer and technology marketing, branding, communication, industry and government relations, and sustainability, including corporate social responsibility. With over 25 years of professional experience in technology, pre-sales, sales, strategy, regulatory, and business management positions, Amit has in-depth understanding of global and Indian telecommunications market. He has held various technology and leadership positions in organizations like Lucent Technologies, Motorola, Huawei, and Nokia. Pleased to have you on today's panel, Amit.
Thank you, Sachin. And
Right.
thank you for having me here at IMC this year. We have been participating as Nokia in IMC physically in the last few years. This is by far has become as the flagship event in telecom in India, and I'm really happy to be part of this today. You talked about the SDG Goal 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. I would say that Nokia as a company, at our core, is at the heart of this SDG 9 because we are the ones who are enabling the industry with innovative products and creating the infrastructure for the future. Starting from mobile technology, which happened in India 25 years back, where the first call was made using a Nokia phone on a Nokia network. And today we are at a situation where we are talking about launching 5G. Coming to the discussion about how COVID has changed things, and I'll give you some statistics around it. So what we analyzed is that during this COVID pandemic time, the data consumption across the networks in India increased anything between 15 to 20%, and even more in some other countries, but in India about 15 to 20% across the board. Now, it is only because in the last 25 years, a robust telecom infrastructure has been created that we were able to absorb and give a seamless connectivity without any failures. Of course, I have to acknowledge the COVID warriors, the telecom warriors who were there on the field in spite of all these challenges. But what I'm trying to say is that we have created a very, very robust telecom network in the last 25 years. What COVID did was also give us some new, I would say, accelerators. We suddenly saw that the demand for fixed wireless and fixed home connectivity saw an increase because there was a shift from office to home kind of working. We also saw that bandwidth were getting choked and there was an increased focus on building the backhaul, which means that the pipe which connects various parts of the network so that you can carry large amount of data. We saw huge volume increase in streaming and video kind of applications, besides the other e-commerce and other things. So today, I mean, COVID made us discover that, our healthcare was at home, our business was at home, our office was at home, our shopping is at home, and banking is at home, entertainment is at home. So it created, and I think it created an opportunity for us to accelerate the adaptation of digitalization, which would have happened in any case, but I think it has given us a boost in terms of how this is going to follow in the future. And the answer to all that, I would say, to a large extent, is coming from the mobile connectivity that we have been able to provide over the years in India, And of course, with the advent or the starting or coming of 5G, which takes this whole connectivity to a completely different level, whereby you kind of unleash completely new opportunities both for the operators and the country and the economy.
Wonderful. I think great pertinent points that you're making, and I couldn't agree with you more that the decades of spend on telecom was literally heartfelt during this pandemic time. The resilience that it brought to the business was immense. I imagine the days we would have hit this pandemic and had no internet connectivity, the e-commerce to off work from home, nothing would have happened, and I think the society and the investments that we've made in this as a whole is helping us a lot. So, Amit, what are your views on technologies like 5G can play a role in the future and a more sustainable future of the overall society? And what is like in your view, telecom operators? Would they be just the fat pipes to us, or would they bring something more to the table?
I think thank you for that question, Sachin, because I think that is what is what I call as the coming of 5G is more like it's not an evolution. We've had evolution of technologies from 2G to 4G, but taking this step towards 5G is actually a revolution, and I'll explain exactly that. Till now, as you very rightly said, the operators and the networks that the CSPs, the communication service providers, were providing were more like a dump pipe. So they were going on, there was huge increase in data consumption. In fact, one analysis I saw that even in, just in the last 5-7 years, we've had like almost 40 times increase of data consumption in India. But having said that, the data was going on increasing because things were happening and new applications and new ways of using data were there. But yeah, primarily they kind of remained a carrying medium or a highway which was carrying loads of data and going on increasing. I think this is the time when that evolution or change is going to happen, where the communication service providers have an opportunity to what we call to be digital service providers, where they not only provide the pipe but provide these solutions which go end to end. And I think with 5G, in fact, some with already with 4G, and going forward with 5G is going to enable new economies where the networks will not only be for data consumption on mobile phones and laptops and whatever you use or voice communication. It is going beyond that, where the networks of tomorrow will be the backbone of digital connectivity across enterprises. And I think this is already happening across the world. I can give you some examples. In fact, manufacturing is an example where we ourselves, with one of the operators in India, have created our own factory in Chennai into what is called an Industry 4.0 smart factory. We have removed hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of LAN WAN cable, connected all the machines to a wireless connectivity, brought automation, and thereby increased the efficiency of working on that factory multifold. So that's an example that we have created, but that's an opportunity where the service provider as a partner with us can take this into a business model and tie up with maybe thousands of factories in trying to promote that service provider, what we call service provider as a partner. So manufacturing is one example. Logistic is another example. Smart cities, Dubai, Australia, there are examples where we have been contributors in technology. Of course, the operators have done it, or some system integrators have created smarter cities. But there is a huge opportunity to do various interventions in creating cities smarter. Transportation, the Helsinki airport, the Vienna airport has been powered up with 5G by us, where they have become smart airports. Mining, it just goes on and on. Oil, gas, ports, harbors. There are examples in Finland. And more than that, if I look at India perspective, there is a huge opportunity in use cases that we have already developed, some already in the pilot phase of deployment in things like smart agriculture and smart education or remote education, which are right now available live to take the journey of connectivity from just being a means of voice and data to something which is useful for changing lives of people. And that's what we say in Nokia is we we create technologies to connect the world and change lives. So that is our motto and our mission. And I think we have been doing that. I just hope that these new technologies like 5G happen in India and India does not miss the bus while the rest of the world is moving ahead.
Thank you, Amit. Very strong points from coming in from you. I'm really personally quite curious about the special initiative called SmartPur, digitizing the villages of India, that you have taken as Nokia. So, could you give us some brief of the same and how it has impacted, let's say, rural India to take the advantage of this technology, digitization, and internet?
Yeah. You know, we have the country management team, and often we come and discuss. We have to do CSR but spends. And while in one of those meetings, while we were ideating as to what we do, this was about 2 years back. The whole world, everybody, and even India was talking about smarter cities. And then it was like a light bulb which came and said that why not smart villages? And we said let's take an initiative project and conceive a project and ideate it. So we have created 100 villages already. Another 160 are going to be operational by March of next year. And we are taking it up to 500 or even more. So each of these village, we have tied up with NGO partners and the local panchayats, where we have created an integrated infrastructure which is basically running on 5 pillars: financial inclusion, governance inclusion, education, healthcare, and livelihood. And it's an integrated center where a panchayat office or a building has been taken. We have redone that. We have created a micro ATM in most of these villages by tying up with one of the banks in that particular area. I'm saying, I mean, even I think in the last 6 months, I have seen that about 50,000 transactions have happened on those micro ATMs, with 20 crores or more of transactions. But what I'm trying to say is imagine the sustainability impact of this, because the people in the village who had to go 5, 10, 15 kilometers to go to a bank or an ATM to withdraw money is now able to do it in the village itself with a small machine, which is an Aadhaar scanner. It's a life-changing thing, and how much carbon footprint we are able to save on that. Similarly, on governance, we have tied up with CSE kind of entrepreneurs or made them our entrepreneurs. And on education, on healthcare, we have tied up with the Doc Online, where we are giving remote healthcare to people. So it's an integrated session place where a villager comes with all its problems and everything is solved, fully connected with the Wi-Fi setup, microwave or some kind of connectivity we have given. So it's a great project to see an integrated approach, and we are very happy, and we are kind of taking it forward as we grow.
Wonderful, and confidence coming in from you, give me satisfaction that you're still, in good hands with respect to the players like yours. And it's still day one for a country like India to get digitized, and there's so much more that can be done, not just from the urban cities, even going back to the villages. So, thanks for your inputs, Amit. I would want to invite Mr. Dilip Chenoy to this session. Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General FICCI. Dilip was appointed the Secretary General of FICCI, a leading industry body in India, in April 2018. And he was earlier the Managing Director and CEO of National Skill Development Corporation, a public private partnership. He spearheaded NSDC for 5 years, which aims to skill 150 million Indians by 2022, and hence contributed in harnessing India's demographic divide. Um, Prior to in NSTC, he was associated with the CII for 19 years and served as regional director for the southern region. In 2004, he joined the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers as Director General. Chenoy has authored numerous articles on general and on environment, automotive industry, as well as several newspaper articles on industry and skill. So, welcome, Mr. Dilip Chenoy, to this session. Pleasure to have you as a part of this team panel. Dilip, you're on mute.
No, thank you,
Thank you.
Sachin. No, I was waiting for your question actually.
Wonderful. So, Dilip, what according to you are some of the perceived bottlenecks around achievement of, let's say, service this SDG goals and the key actions which should be taken for achieving the 2030 target?
Thank you, Sachin, and I must compliment both the earlier speakers, Dr. Archana Gulati from NITI, and of course Amit Marwah from Nokia for laying out such a uh, the challenges and opportunities in such graphic detail. The see the SDGs or the 17 SDGs, they are at a very high level, right? So one of the big challenges from a execution perspective or a business and industry standpoint is that the macro targets are not clarified down into micro level action that is needed. There's a need for both a top down and a kind of a bottom up approach to the SDGs. I think from a corporate sector standpoint, we are one of the most important stakeholders in the path towards SDGs. And FICCI believes that the corporate sector's involvement in this would actually help derive efficiencies in the achievement of the goals and the targets that the government has set out in every sphere. So the first thing is that if the SDGs are very ambitious, prior to the SDGs, we had the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium Development Goals actually did not get achieved universally or even across different goals in countries. And the SDGs can only be achieved if everybody, the corporates, the policymakers, civil society, and other relevant stakeholders come together and collectively address societal, environmental, and economic goals and targets. To just say, is it possible, is it not possible? I think the COVID has shown that if everybody works together, we can actually, do something which was thought impossible. And if I were to just take, health is also one of the goals, and education is one of the goals, right? So during the COVID pandemic, we were importing ventilators or PPEs, and we didn't have sufficient production of masks. But everybody got together. The self-help groups got together to manufacture masks. The government actually created a framework and got all the corporates and others to work together. The research groups like the National Aeronautical Laboratories, for example, developed technology for ventilators. Maruti as a company used it to actually share technology with a startup who actually went on to make ventilators. So the first thing is that we need to actually look at this collaborative effort going forward. And you know, I think the second challenge is that the collaborative has to be built on the strengths of each type of stakeholder. For example, Amit talked about his great collaboration at the grassroots level with the panchayats and the local people there. Those people have trust. They have a huge embodiment of trust, right? And of course, Dr. Gulati talked about the government's efforts. They have absolute scale. So if you want to go for scale, you actually have to partner with government. And like Amit actually demonstrated, the corporate sector has the execution capability. So if you get this trust, scale, and execution capability together, collectively you can address the SDGs going forward. And I think, there are other drivers that are actually happening today. If you look at the whole ESG movement that is emerging, and even the Prime Minister in his address to investors when he was talking to global investors, he said that India is among the leading adopters of ESG, there, whether it's environment or social or governance concept there. And a lot of Indian companies are adopting the circular economy going forward, and a lot of actual action has happened. Of course, the biggest government program with collaborative effort of private sector, which was a Swachh Bharat mission. The first phase is now going into Swachh Bharat, mission 2, where we will have the collaboration on sludge management and wastewater treatment. Water is also an important area of the SDGs. So if you look at sector, all of the goals there, and of course we ourselves did a survey, right? And it was that over 60% of the companies are prepared to work towards the goal, and close to 44% or 45% of the companies felt that they were individually prepared to take on actions to address the global goals. And and this is, of course, the last goal 17 is for global partnerships for sustainable development, and you can achieve more through partnership. So I think that is the challenge, is to getting everyone to work together and work concertedly towards a goal. So, like I said, during the COVID time, the preparation of the masks, PPEs, and ventilators, etc., were a good example of cooperation. In the next phase, when you have the rollout of the vaccine, right, and the inoculation, you will see another area that we will be able to collaborate, and the government is leading a lot of initiatives here. As Dr. Gulati mentioned when she was talking about the education space. So if you look at the COVID, suddenly crores of students had to go, from physical to online classrooms. So how everybody collaborated, teachers, NGOs, there's a huge story of collaboration in that area, which also can be, multiplied to take forward the goals. But I think innovation and mainstreaming stuff that was done in during the COVID period into the normal of the future will be a fundamental shift as we go forward. And I think as we go into the next few years, there'll be further collaboration and further research and innovation in each areas of the SDGs to see how we can actually do it. It's not only linked to local, but it is also linked to international cooperation, and the world across boundaries has to get together to enable these things. Long answer to your short question, but you'd asked for the challenges, multiple challenges, but nothing that cannot be solved with communication, collaboration, and a cooperative effort going forward.
Mr. Dilip, it was pleasure listening to you, and it was music to my ears that nothing is unsolvable, and it's just the vision and strategy coming in from the government, along with the scale and the execution capabilities coming in from the corporate, can solve perhaps the most toughest problems that we may have in building this nation towards becoming a digital nation, not just a digital village or a digital urban city, but a digital nation. And some of your views were quite heartwarming to listen. One more question, if you could, give us some thoughts around how do you think this ICT players, and we have different types of ICT players in the country, how can they collaborate to kind of create some joint solutions? I think there's a pocket of innovations happening. How can this come together with maybe some examples that could address the digital problems to the end clients, such as me or you?
Thank you, Sachin, for that question. If you look at the ICT industry in the current context, and before I begin my answer, I'll actually like to say that the current digital transformation in the country and in the world, and in either the institution or the individual or industry, was not led by a chief technology officer or chief innovation officer or the CEO. The current digital transformation has been accelerated exponentially only because of COVID-19, right? And what was the general trend before that is not going to be the trend post COVID. So digital experiences pre-COVID and digital experiences and ecosystems post-COVID are going to be exponentially different. Now, if you look at the digital ecosystem, it's a very interesting thing. As Dr. Gulati so ably pointed out in her thing, one is the kind of connectivity. How do you get connectivity? She also mentioned devices. So you have devices, connectivity. Then you need, the whole Digital India mission. Although it was written in before the COVID actually came about, is a good framework to look at it going forward. So connectivity, devices, security, how do you actually look at the cloud infrastructure or storage, because you're going to look at it, and then you're going to look at the services, including the service which we are using while we are delivering this collaborative communication to the people who will be hearing us in the Congress, right? So each element has to be actually be looked at. So if you look at a company or an organization, in the COVID scenario, you wanted to reach out to a customer who you were not visible to, right? So you needed to be able to be digital. Now, a lot of the Indian or India accesses the web through the mobile, right? And a lot of the web is in English. So if you have to scale it up going forward, and again, Dr. Gulati talked about the rural-urban divide, and the areas where there's there's no connectivity, etc. But there is also a language divide. We have to bridge the language divide to be able to connect the whole of India, to connect the whole of world. Most of the other people have things in their local languages, but they are restricted. We have multiple languages here, and FICCI has been working on this. ILA, which is the Indian Language Internet Alliance, to try and get more local language content onto the web. That is one aspect that we need to look at, collaboration amongst not only the information technology guys, but also the communication people, and then the people who make the devices and the people who make the other services that ride on this. So in the second aspect that needs to be done is that you need to actually ensure that digital literacy, is ramped up in all sections of society. It's quite surprising in some of the webinars and all, and there are multiple platforms. StreamYard is one, then you have Zoom, you have WebEx, and you have BlueJeans, and you have all sorts of platforms which are there. And as an individual, one has to, irrespective of the age, one has to actually then learn how to use these technologies, etc. And just as an aside, one of the most used words in the current COVID era is that, "Sir, you're on mute," or "Unmute yourself." Okay. And this whole digital literacy impact should actually be done, because there is a way to communicate digitally, right? We are communicating on a web platform, and we are talking to each other. But how do you actually create your product and services? How do you put it up on the net? How do you connect to your customers? And how do you actually then enable delivery of your product or services to be done online or offline? How do you create the logistics network? How do you create a system of payments, which is digital payments, and the UPI, and is a good example of how it is. So, and then of course, if there's a grievance, how do you solve this problem to actually address it in an overall way, but to do it in a secure, safe, transparent, and trustworthy manner. So this the whole ICT ecosystem has to come together to enable institutions again, uh, industry or service providers and individuals to actually connect and seamlessly do business or do commerce or share information or share knowledge or connect in the whole realm of the current scenario without any fear of security, without any fear of loss of transmission, or without any fear of being left out or digitally not connected. Of course, Amit talked about the whole IoT thing within the factory, which is a different kind of a solution going forward, and that's a different type of collaboration that is required because you got to embed sensors and other devices within existing equipment. You got to be the government has come out with a protocol on M2M communication that has to be expanded, and there's a whole lot of other issues of collaboration between ICT companies to enable India to fully take advantage of this. Y2K was a watershed period for the information technology industry in India. And I believe the COVID-19 in the year 2020 could be another dramatic watershed era for Indian IT industry, including, and I'm not talked into the areas of machine learning and artificial intelligence and other things, where the ICT providers could work with different providers to help them optimize their business, to help them become more productive, to help them anticipate customer needs and deliver a seamless kind of experience to customers in India and abroad. So that's a kind of a whole ecosystem that we need to look at going forward, and requires a lot of collaboration, sharing of all sorts of information, allowing access to your systems, getting collaborative, agreeing to collaborate. And collaboration is actually the next form of competition. So I think if we collaborate, we can actually increase the cake and or increase the pie rather than fight for the same slice of pie going forward.
Thank you. I think very pertinent point, and becoming bold and collaborate instead of compete. And I love the point that you made around the language part of it, which is again a barrier to adoption of digital. And then how can that be solved? So very pertinent point, Doctor. Mr. Dilip Chenoy, and let's move on to our next panelist, Anuj Siddharth. Anuj Sidharth is the Deputy Director of Marketing and Communications at MediaTek. Um, and he spent over 16 years with some of the most innovative and storied brands worldwide. Sidharth believes that organizations create value for their brand and for the customer with 360-degree approach that blends technology and marketing. He's passionate about initiating strategies to realize long-term business objectives while also increasing the visibility and reputations of brand. Welcome, Anuj, to the session today. And
Thanks, Sachin.
before Thank you. So my first question coming in quite sharp to you. As Mr. Dilip Chenoy has mentioned, COVID-19 has been a watershed moment for digital adoption journey of organizations, and connectivity has played a pivotal role in this. Could you share some examples on how ICT industry has acted as an accelerator to this, digital transformation and adoption?
Thanks, Sachin, and glad to be a part of this session today. I believe co-panelist members have already shared the perspective, and probably make my task a little easy to throw some crisp examples, But having said, despite of effect, the COVID has been becoming like a game changer there, and I believe there's no doubt that we talk about the kind of digital adoption journey for entire organizations, we talk about globally, right? And we all have been actually working quite tirelessly to adopt this new normal situation because of the COVID, right? The whole industry, I believe, has been evolving at a drastic rate. And the pandemic has probably been provided with that of a quite a long term impact on the customer's mindset, customer psyche as well. And at the same time, because it has been like quite sad to see how COVID has actually impacted our lives. But we have to keep moving on in the direction, and no doubt, when we talk about ICT industry, is playing quite a vital role in the acceleration. And we need to analyze that how market needs, and provide the best fit solution during these times. We have seen that people, they are adopting many new habits during these times. There's a lot of learnings which are happening around, right? A lot of tech has actually been evolved during these times, right? And people are actually started to believe a lot of on a lot of technology gadgets, digital solutions, we be it at work and entertainment, communication, research, shopping, co-panelists, they talked about all these aspects is so important, right? And I certainly agree to that, right? And anything and everything has probably is moving more towards to the digital environment, and at basically at MediaTek, we focus to develop technologies. We always keep humans in mind, and the solutions powered by MediaTek have always ensured the kind of productivity and continuity across the industries. Well, talking more towards the COVID impact, and we have seen many businesses, manufacturing hubs, productivity, probably has impacted, and the crisis, being highlighted, it's becoming a strong need, for a lot of, strong research, and development and manufacturing ecosystem, within the country, right? And thus we see, smart electronics, shift towards, more of digital working environment, so all these new factors are taking up a shape, talking more on the smart electronics, we understand that where it's like now becoming like a backbone, and strategically towards for the relevant sector. We talked about healthcare, colleagues, they talked about healthcare, telecommunication, security, transportation, agriculture, finance institutes, right? So I think the kind of dependency, the kind of dependency on these smart solutions, it is certainly increasing, right? The shift towards the digital working environment, right? It is playing a really really important role, and it is also helping to reduce the dependency, in a manner, that how the personal interactions have been taking place, right? And we're trying to maintain that kind of productivity, right? Future for the workplaces, we all understand, we all have been, most of the times working from home during these time frames, right? So mobility and flexibility of working hours, right? And for example, a perfect example, of India Mobile Congress, at MediaTek, we have always been, participating for last few years with IMC, right? And this is the first time how this event is happening, digitally, right? It's a classic example which we all have today, right? I believe co-panelists, they also talked about the digital skills, right? So I believe digital skills, I think that's evolving, that's one of the sector, wherein that is how digital transformation, would happen in countries like India, right? And also a very very basic example which I can see at my home, my daughter's teacher back from school, Hindi teacher, probably, probably she wasn't even aware how to use the laptop and make the presentations and all. But I think with the advent of it, with the times, the way the technology is taking up shape, right? So everybody is trying to learn and adopt all these new ways, during these times. So certainly, I believe that is how a technology is taking a shape, that is what we see, a transformation which is happening. And and specifically talking from a MediaTek, we always try and come up with the technologies, which can actually be accessible for everyone, which can try and change everyday's life, At MediaTek, we work, to empower, and inspire people how to expand their horizons and achieve their goals. When we talk about the smart technologies available. Yeah.
Thank you, Anuj. Very pertinent points, and how digital has changing almost everything that we work, and how MediaTek in particular is helping this bridging coming together. One more quick question, and this one is going to be the last before we wrap up for today. How, according to you, is telecom playing a role in this journey beyond just connectivity? We have asked this question to a previous panelist and got his view of the world answer. I really look upon your views as well on this.
Absolutely. I think it is one of the most interesting points here, right? And probably an example which comes into my mind. I recently visited one of my friend's farm, in a remote location, and I quite noticed, it's what's very interesting to see the kind of connectivity which was available there. And, despite of the power cut, I mean that was not becoming a bottleneck. People, they were still watching their favorite movies, their shows, their matches, by hooking themselves with the smartphones. So connectivity through the smartphones, and that is what shows that how people are actually, and how the importance of this digitally inclined world, it is becoming a part of everybody's life. You talk about schools, the education, the healthcare, sectors, which is available in these kind of villages. Well, talk furthermore about the telecom. It is just not only about providing the connectivity, right? But it is much more than that, right? It is driving the digital transformations, right? Across industries, right? The new technologies which we talk about in the kind of interoperability, which has led to emergence of the new business models, right? And access to the real time data, markets, and in general improving the quality of life, education, healthcare, for people. Probably they're working, I mean they're e-learning, they're adopting the smart farming techniques, right? When we talk about farming sector here, right? Well, India is world's second largest telecommunication industry, right? And world's second largest internet user base, right? Which we have, right? With some of the numbers we heard today from the co-panelists, right? With 500 million smartphone mark, right? And we tend to reach around 820 million mark by 2020. So yes, very interesting numbers, and which is coming up, right? And from the limited data usage, I would say, to the bigger data centric connectivity, for users supporting OTT, talking about mobile gaming, right? With the use of connected devices, smartphones, tablets, laptops, voice ready devices, right? Smart speakers, right? The whole ecosystem is taking up a new shape. Well, specifically talking about MediaTek, we assured the kind of chipsets, the kind of technology we are working on, the core technology across these platforms, is trying to make a lot of innovation, for an end consumer, right? So every market segment will benefit from the single pieces of the chipsets, what we work on, enabling the device makers, build each and everything smarter with the enhanced AI features, powerful AI features, as we talk about the futuristic approach, right? With that of edge AI technologies, which we foresee which would help the digitalization, right? And with that of it, probably adding more intelligence to the connectivity, that would also help to create more innovation and objective, of bringing these technologies, and provide the overall awareness, with these kind of technologies, right? It is certainly helping and enhancing, the role of technology, in a realistic manner, when we talk about, yeah.
Thank you very much, Anuj. I think very strong points that you're making. And with this, I'd like to wrap up today's session. And I really want to thank all the panelists who were there with me today in addressing and talking about this pertinent topic about setting up, shaping the sustainable digital future through mobile technologies, telecom, and internet at large. I would agree to one of the strongest point that were made during this presentation, that it's the vision and mission by the government and the regulatory bodies, and the execution rigor coming in from corporates, and the inclusion put together would be the future of taking us through this digital journey. And I can still call it day one of this evolution. With this note, I thank all of you in the panel and on the listening side, and I strongly feel adopting to a customer and a cloud-first strategy to manage massive data demand generated, fueled particularly with the advent of 5G, will ensure on-track agenda towards sustainable development and achievement of the SDG goals by 2030. Thank you everyone for being a part of this lovely session today. Wish you a very happy new year in advance. Stay safe. Thank you very much.